correct me if I'm making a straw man. I want you to.
Sure.
It's better if you steel man the position, right? So I believe that position generally leads to uncertainties about morality, value, purpose of life, and general existential questions are not addressed in a fulfilling way. I believe that that worldview, pragmatically and empirically, is not satisfying.
I think the thing is, being uncertain is not something people. It's a warring position to take. It seems terrifying initially, but reason has simply guided me into this realm of uncertainty, and I think that you can almost deify your rational faculties, and you can find solace and hope that through reason and you can be guided, and of course reason can be used and exploited to perpetrate the most awful things that humanity have enacted on one another. But it doesn't affect morality. It doesn't reflect beauty. It's purely a rational understanding.
Okay. The thing is, again, when it comes to rationality, I don't think rationality and the value of rationality and the fruits of rationality, which we get through science and philosophy and general education, these things can be understood from an agnostic point of view. I don't think an agnostic or an atheistic position can justify us trusting our rational cognitive faculties.
That's a very good question, because I'm saying I almost deify. If you ask what my deity is, it's my reason, and it's a tool that's blunt. In my mind, it was developed to hunt antelope across the Great Plains of the Serengeti, not debate with you. So it's a tool that is ultimately not equipped for what I really want to use it for, understanding the ultimate truths of humanity. But it's the best we've got, and you're saying that ultimately it can't be trusted because reason cannot justify reason. I can't take an objective step back and look at my rational process and think, God, is this wrong or right? Because I can't escape it, obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't think our rational abilities have been endowed into our minds by a divine authority.
That's what I believe.
I'm saying it was designed to help us survive in the natural world, and we should trust it because we're all still here, so it must work to some degree. It must have, and although you see all of these different rational structures arguing against one another, I think that at their core we do ultimately agree that our perceptions vaguely do have a blueprint on the reality. Our reason is vaguely accurate, not 100%, but it is. And I think and it's derived from, in my mind, evolution and the ability to survive.
Yeah, yeah. And just to clarify, I'm not saying our reason's not trustworthy. I'm saying we both agree our reason's trustworthy and our reason is a good tool. The question is, what better explains those faculties, that cognitive architecture we have, a theistic worldview or an atheistic worldview?
I'm atheistic or
Can I begin off with the story of Alfred Russel Wallace?
Okay.
Right? So, excuse me, excuse me. I'm finding it hard to have a conversation with him.
This is the difference between sophistry and philosophy. Philosophy, you have one concept, you try and chip away and move through dialogue to define it. That's just asserting your ideas.
It is.
But,
so I'll give you the example of we'll have to continue.
It's fine.
Yes, it's all right. It's Speaker's Corner.
Freedom of expression.
Freedom of expression, indeed.
Yes.
So with Alfred Russel Wallace, he was the co-founder of the theory of natural selection. Natural selection explaining biodiversity and these changes which were heritable and then passed on during generations. So what's interesting, Darwin and Wallace, they both came to the conclusion around the same time about natural selection's efficacy. However, they didn't know about each other. Then they got to meet each other, and Darwin and Wallace, they both put forward the theory of natural selection. So in the Victorian times, it wasn't known as Darwin's theory. It was known as Darwin and Wallace's theory. Now what's interesting is Wallace fell off the bandwagon. because of the issue that we're discussing. Wallace realized that if you take natives from Latin America, you bring them to London, you allow them to flourish in this environment, they are just as intelligent as their European counterparts. So he realized that selective pressures, which were there to enhance survival and reproduction, they should not create a situation where you have this surplus cognitive capacity. And that surplus cognitive capacity, he believed, could not be explained by natural selection. So Wallace, he essentially parted ways with Darwin when it came to human beings and our cognitive faculties and what we can do. So what we've been discussing so far is our very cognitive faculties. So the discussions we're having about whether theism or atheism can better explain this cognitive architecture, this goes back to Wallace and Darwin's discussions, because the reality is it's not just a theoretical idea. Empirically, there's evidence to show our cognitive faculties are way more advanced than what natural selection would develop them to be.
I'm not a biologist, but you can imagine we can outrun any other mammal apart from huskies. We can run for extremely long distances, and you can imagine we all from Africa, our ancestors would be hunting these great hordes of antelope or whatever across large distances, and we would have to communicate and develop tools. And I think that the idea that we have a surplus amount of reason is ultimately, I think it's because ultimately what I want to understand is how your mechanical or your tools of reason led you to the conclusion that the position of a theist is of greater rational merit than the position of atheism or even agnosticism.
Sure.
So I would like to understand your process, and I think the idea that we have a surplus of reason it's impressive because we're using our reason for things that it wasn't originally intended to be used for. So it was meant to be used for tools and hunting, and we're using it in a totally novel way. This is why Speaker's Corner is a great establishment of reason and debate. I'm very sorry.
No, it's fine.
Reason and debate, because ultimately we can examine one another's tools and see why we reach different conclusions with the same faculties.
Yeah.
But yeah.
There's two things you asked me. Strobel.
Yeah.
The first thing, Strobel, was about why I believe in theism rather than atheism, and the second is that we're using our if you like, surplus capacity to come to these types of discussions and do these types of things. That's the first time in Speaker's Corner I've seen a football being kicked. That was a bit strange.
Yeah, well,
okay,
there we go,
so
yeah.
I lost my trail.
Here we are claiming we're rational animals. I love it.
Yeah. So when it comes to theism, I believe in the theistic position for a few reasons. Now, I don't want to go into the general reasons without getting into the particular reason about why I believe in God in this context about the cognitive architecture. Then I can explain to you generally why I believe in theism. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
So you did it. Got big things.
Okay.
Eat humble pie, not just now. Eat humble pie, like right now.
Okay. So that's one of the enjoyable things about Speaker's Corner.
Exactly. We're all, although everyone's fighting over different views, we are singing in harmony about the freedom of expression.
That's right.
We all.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
That's why you're talking.
Okay. Okay. So basically, when it comes to rationality, which we're seeing a lot of a lack of use of rationality here. Speaker's Corner. That's right. So when it comes to this particular argument, I believe God has created us to have a rational mind. And that rational mind is trustworthy, not because it evolved due to natural selection, but because God has actually endowed us with that. Now, because of that paradigm, the paradigm that I begin off with, I don't need to justify my rationality. But an atheistic perspective, the reason why they need to justify it is because you can, for example, if there's a person who stares at a cave and he sees 3 lions walking in. 2 lions walk out and he can't do mathematics. He walks in there assuming there's no lion, he's going to get eaten, right? So therefore natural selection would have developed these rational faculties. However, when it comes to us sitting around, having coffee, discussing quantum mechanics, it's not explained by natural selection. I believe that's explained by theism. Okay? Now, the other point that we were speaking about, which you asked me, why do I generally believe in God? I believe the primary reason why I believe in God is because it's natural. That there's an innate disposition in us to call upon someone greater than us, and it's inbuilt within us. So, I don't know if you've ever read the Quran. You've come to the Speaker's Corner a few times?
No, I haven't. I've only read the first page or two, but I would like to, I need to read it in the obviously original Arabic.
Well, no, you can read it in English. It's not a problem.
I think this is a very important point you touched on. You're saying that some deity, like an artist, has painted the rational framework that allows us to explore him and celebrate him. And ultimately, I am either misled or it is unnatural for me not to crave belief. And I'm saying that it's not natural. Uncertainty is, I think, a strong and brave position. And in many ways, it isn't natural. We like to believe our perceptions are certain, and our beliefs are constructed in a way we can spew them with a degree of conviction. But I don't think you need a deity to,
Oh no, no,
brilliant.
no. So I'm gonna.
So my point here is that I think the explaining, bringing God into the picture on the grounds we have a surplus of reason is not necessary, because we can explain reason through the process of evolution. And I think that there's so many different frameworks that you're seeing around you. It's so hard to firstly believe in a specific deity and then promote that above all others, and that's why I can't go for the ideology, the religion.
Yeah.
I can't go
so
for religious belief.
I would disagree with you, because I would say this could be the fallacy of equivocation. When I'm speaking about rationality and when you're speaking about rationality, we're not talking about the same thing. When you're, I'll explain why I don't think we are, which is why we're disagreeing. When you say rationality, you're talking about rationality which could be explained by natural selection. So our ability to stick to cost-benefit analysis about what's good for us, what's bad for us, right? Natural selection can explain that. Natural selection can explain our fitness enhancing behaviors. When I'm referring to rationality, I'm referring to the general idea that we can rationalize, and a subcategory is the type of rationality that you're talking about. Do you see?
Because when you look at grade 8, Gibbons can use rudimentary tools, and I would say that we can see rationality in the natural world, but just to a far lesser degree. So it's not exclusively endowed in man. Rationality is shared by other creatures, but to a lesser extent.
Yeah.
And I think you can look at this earlier form of rationality and realise that we actually belong to a great path, a chain of improvement and natural selection. But as I say, I'm not a biologist, but I don't think my reason is explained by some deity. I don't think it's necessary to explain my reason through I'll explain holding of theology.
Yeah, so I'll explain why that is the case. That reason, the way we use our reason, this can't be explained by natural selection. Now you're right, ants have rationality, baboons have rationality, human beings have rationality, and we share rationality with many other species. However, that's neither here nor there. Natural selection can only explain our fitness enhancing behavior. It does not explain why we look out to the cosmos. It doesn't explain our yearning for moral achievements. It doesn't explain many facets of our reason which we use day to day. Right?
At the beginning of this debate, I mentioned beauty as one of my beliefs. And you may say that beauty has no purpose within an evolutionary understanding.
But it does, though.
Well, why would we track across the Great Plains of the Serengeti and stop and admire a flower for 4 hours? A fucking saber-toothed tiger could come up and gnaw us to pieces. Yeah. But this would be a major mistake. Because beauty is very human. Beauty can survive independently of a deity. So we can explain beauty as a form of it's a very good question. Where does beauty come from? Do we need a deity to explain it, or can we explain it through evolution and reason?
Let's widen out the question. Whether it's beauty, us valuing truth for its own sake, not for instrumental reasons.
Yes.
Whether it's morals, our thirst for knowledge, all of these facets, these cannot be explained by natural selection because they don't have fitness enhancing benefits. Like you mentioned, if you're staring at a flower for a long period of time, you get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. That's not evolutionary very wise. However, evolutionary theorists can explain beauty from the respect of reproduction. So you find someone beautiful and you reproduce and you can have fitness enhancing behavior that way. However, when it comes to many of our moral judgments, many of the values that we actually hold, this cannot be explained by evolutionary theorists.
But what values are you referring to? I mean, just look around.
Let's stick to one. Let's stick to one. Okay, so truth, is truth valuable to you?
May I tell you a story? May I tell you a story?
Sure.
Imagine the scene. We're trekking through the wilderness and I communicate to you how we can construct a spear with a sharpened piece of flint on it, and our ability to communicate, process information, and then replicate other things our own species have found, and build on one another's understanding is given us a key evolutionary survival benefit. And I think that the idea that reason has gone beyond its primary function is true to some degree, but it can be explained because as our minds grew, so did our chances of life and survival.
Okay.
So it grew beyond the borders of its original intention, but this can still be explained within the evolutionary process as an extension of its primary function. Because if you follow,
I see what you're saying, but I disagree with the way that you frame the problem. The way you've said, Suboor. So Strabo, the thing.
Ring Suboor.
Yeah, this is a stone from the mountains of Badakhshan in Afghanistan.
Oh, brilliant!
Yes,
the blue.
There's stones.
A very specific blue in.
Yes.
What's it called?
I've forgotten the name. It starts with L. It has a different name in Pashto and has a different name in English. But okay, so this, when a human being is staring at the beautiful blue stones of Badakhshan, right, and they get eaten by a wolf, right? We would agree that's not, from an evolutionary perspective, very good for your survival, right? So look, let's frame the problem. The way you framed it is that reason has gone beyond its original intent, the way natural selection developed it.
I think this does not ultimately. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm framing it in a different way. I'm saying reason, the way that we use it in our day-to-day lives, is far greater than the small subsection that evolutionary psychologists can explain. So the way you would frame it is, this small circle is what's explained by natural selection, and we've gone beyond it. I'm saying it's much bigger.
I'm saying
it's
ultimately a tool, and it's like saying if I gave you a spade, for example, and used it to dig, but you could also use it to kill or to, I don't know, to burn as firewood if it was wooden. So I'm saying the same tool can be used for things it wasn't originally intended for.
Yes, it can. However, that's very different to using your reason, not for, you're using the spear to scratch your back as opposed to kill an animal, that's very different to using your reason to think about existential questions. It's a total different category.
You're this using the same tool for different things.
It's not the same thing though, because when we are thinking about, for example, human beings, when we think about our purpose, we think about why we exist. People go through nihilistic existential crises, right? How is that linked to you running after, you know, some animal in the savannah?
But, well, I'm saying that exactly, it's the same tool, but it's just being used.
No, but that's I see what you're saying. You're saying it's the same tool being used for another domain.
Yeah.
I'm saying two things. I'm saying first, it's an assumption that it's this tool being used in another domain. And secondly, I'm saying you cannot explain why this tool is being used, the tool of reason, in this domain. Because if you go back to, sorry, one second. You know Wallace's original problem with Darwin. Do you understand why that was a problem for him?
Didn't Darwin publish first? And Wallace had a breakdown because he didn't get his book published before Darwin.
Not quite. What actually happened was Darwin was being, I believe, a gentleman by coming to Wallace and saying, let's publish together. So here in London, the Royal Society, which is the oldest society in the world, 1858, Darwin first presented his ideas, but he was aware of Wallace's ideas. And then in 1859, he published The Origin of Species. However, Darwin, from the very beginning, he didn't just take all the credit for himself. He also gave credit to Wallace. So they were on good terms. However, Wallace later on, he started having doubts because of the example I gave earlier. So Darwin wrote him a letter, and Darwin said, don't murder our child. Meaning, we've come up with this theory, we're pushing it forward, now you're jumping off the bandwagon. So it wasn't jealousy, it was a conceptual difference that they have in terms of reason. So the problem I'm highlighting is, I believe Wallace's problem can be solved by theism.
And I'm saying that to posit theism, to explain a problem which I think can be explained through the scaffolding of evolution, is such a gigantic
but there's
leap.
But there's a difference. There's a difference.
Almost an absurd.
The difference is, evolutionary theory, you want to use it as scaffolding to explain these problems. I'm saying it's already been solved by theism.
No, and I'm saying that you can explain it through evolution, and therefore you don't have to posit.
No, but
and you're taking it, you're going from the other direction. You're saying it's been solved by theism, therefore it doesn't need to be explored through evolution.
I'm saying two things. I'm saying not only is it conceptually explained by theism, it cannot be explained by evolutionary psychologists or evolutionary theorists.
This is the impasse that we simply cannot agree on here.
Because look, I'm not saying this out of ignorance. I study the topic.
Evolution certainly happened. We accept that.
Well,
the world's been around for millions of years.
I mean, okay.
We
accept the general idea of biological evolution. We don't deny that. What we deny is, number one, this was a mindless, blind watchmaker. That this is a natural selection. You know, the three wheels. That you have those random mutations or random variations, you have hereditary changes being passed along.
How old do you think the world is?
To the best of our knowledge, the universe is 13.7 and the world is 4-something billion years old.
Okay,
right?
so we agree on this.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So look, there's a few things which I believe evolution cannot explain. Evolution cannot explain design. I believe, but by evolution, I mean Darwinian evolution, natural selection alone. We can have an idea that God used evolution or the processes of evolution in certain contexts. There are some exceptions though. I believe human beings are miraculous creation, right? Because God, like I'll give you an example. How is a normal child born? You know, you have the, I'm not going to get into the birds and the bees and that, but we at the same time, we believe in the virgin birth, right? Let me just complete the example. We believe in the virgin birth for Jesus, we as Muslims, but at the same time, we believe that children are born from a man and a woman together. Jesus, we believe, was born of a virgin. We believe that the first man, what we say Adam, this man was a miraculous creation. There may have been hominids and other types of species before that.
At what point does a hominid, a furry hominid, become divine and miraculous? Because if
we don't believe that.
Evolution, you have to accept a specific generation where the hominid gave birth to another, to a miraculous human.
Yeah, I don't believe that. Sorry, 1 second. So what I believe is that the hominids existed previously, whatever they were, but Adam, what we believe in Adam, he did not come through another hominid. He was a miraculous creation. Now there's other Muslims who, you know, they have different opinions on this, but that's my belief.
But why would you can see you can dig up bones and see how we progress between Neanderthals and we know why have all of this evidence of gradual change, and then say suddenly there was some divine intervention, an entirely new species came along.
So there's two things here. There's two things here. Darwin's general idea of gradualism, even if I wasn't Muslim, and even if there were no religious incentive to challenge these perspectives, from a purely evidence point of view, gradualism is false in the fossil record. We have massive changes, like the Cambrian explosion. We have massive changes, and chapter 6 of Darwin's book, In the Origin of Species, he talks about gradualism being a problem due to the Cambrian explosion. So look, we believe God created the world. Some species could have evolved, but when it comes to human beings, we believe it is a miraculous creation.
So, and I'm just saying, why could for me?
You've got some bug in your hair.
Oh really? Oh, yeah.
Just flick it off. Yeah. It's like a dead fly.
Oh right.
It's alright.
Yeah.
Where's this tea?
What I'm saying is that two hominids were peering at one another from two separate treetops. The girl gave him the eyes, they came down, and over a gradual period of time, a certain group of large apes reproduced and humans developed, and we've been around for about 200,000 years. And civilization started almost 7,000 years ago, and it gave us such a leisure because the food and water was in excess. We could sit around, we could discuss things, we could use our rational faculties to pursue other things rather than finding.
Yeah, so
I think this is a process we have to that has far more evidence than positing a day.
So let me put it another way. So when it comes to, for example, Homo erectus over 1 million years, we have those skulls, right? I'm going to first explain to you the chronology, and this is, again, I'm just giving you my opinion, the chronology. Human beings, we believe that human beings were a miraculous creation. What we call human, what biologists call human, is Homo erectus, Homo naledi, all those things. We would say that those hominids are not part of that thing. However, I'm going to put it to you, remind me of it. Strabo. This is irrelevant to believing in God. Whether somebody believes in evolution or they do not believe in evolution, they believe in Darwinism or they don't believe in Darwinism, they believe in Homo erectus being linked to us or not, is irrelevant. The fact is, theism explains design and explains our cognitive faculties, whether you believe in the miraculous creation of Adam or not. So the main thing we should stick to talking about is whether theism or atheism better explains these things. Sorry,
miraculous in what sense?
Yeah, but then let me just say, you said yes, of course it can explain it, but then I could posit some strange beast called Moloch, and I could say that reason comes from Moloch. So of course theism does explain it. I'm just saying it's a wrong, flawed explanation.
Okay, so let me explain something. I'm not saying using the surplus cognitive architecture is the only reason to believe in God. I'm not saying that. If this argument did not exist, I would still believe in God, because like I said to you previously, Strabo, my reason for believing in God is because it's natural. Now, once you start off with a theistic worldview, pragmatically it explains our morals, our purpose, our values, and it explains our rationality, and it epistemically frees us to explain the world in a much better way than an atheistic worldview. Because from an atheistic worldview, I believe not only can you not explain reason or values or morality, I believe you can also get stuck in the problem of solipsism.
I think I have explained why reason can be why we have reason without giving without offering a theological explanation. And
but you agreed with me earlier that the Wallace issue, right? You acknowledge that issue is there. That reason.
Cambrian explosion.
No. Reason beyond our ability to survive and reproduce. That surplus reason cannot be explained by Darwinism.
And I'm saying is that we simply have the leisure because we live in a civilized community where food and water there's a surplus. We don't have to think about constantly guessing food. Our reason can be employed to focus on other things.
Why?
Because we simply have time to do all of
that. Doesn't make any sense because from a Darwinian point of view.
I gave you the analogy of a spade to explain why.
No, you did. But you see the arguments that you're using. You're trying to explain away a problem, but that problem is persistent. The reason why it's persistent.
I'm saying it's not a problem. I'm not saying it's a problem
okay,
at
but
all.
okay. So there's a few things here. From an academic point of view, this problem exists. Whether you acknowledge it or not, academically it does exist.
The problem that we have a surplus of reason, as you put it. What is a surplus of reason? I don't even know what that means.
No. Okay, I'll explain to you what it means. It means okay. So
we don't have a surplus.
So let me.
It's gone beyond the primordial purpose.
No, but let me define it very explicitly and clearly. What Wallace pointed out is that we use our reason. Our reason developed far more than what's required for our survival and reproduction, right? That's the problem that he highlighted.
No, that's all good.
Yeah. So there's a book which actually speaks about this problem as well. It's called Beyond Evolution, published by Oxford University. You can read that book, which also highlights this problem. So this problem is well known in academia, and next time you're here, we can discuss that in more detail. Yeah,
okay,
but I want you to read up on that because you're trying to brush away that problem, but that problem does exist in the academic literature.
And all I'm saying is that it's not a problem at all because it can be explained through.
If it wasn't a problem, then Wallace wouldn't have jumped off the bandwagon with Darwin.
Because of course Wallace was an Anglican, so he didn't want to totally abandon the need to explain evolution through a deity.
He was agnostic actually.
Well, okay, but,
he wasn't a Christian.
Most Anglicans are agnostic.
He wasn't Christian. He was basically someone.
The Church of England never is, my friend.
No, but sometimes this happens that if somebody disagrees with Darwinism, then we try and discredit them by saying they're religious. He wasn't religious, but even if he was, his arguments were valid.
I'm not a biologist, and I'm not an authority on the precise mechanism, evolutionary mechanisms that enabled us to survive and flourish and become rational animals. I can't comment on this, but what I will say.
Well, you have been commenting on it.
Yes, but what I will say, what I will say is that reason does not need a deity to explain it.
So give a better alternative to God.
Well, I think if you just imagine we're all in a group, we're hunting, we need to communicate with one another, we need to make tools. Reason is essential for group survival and cooperation.
By the way, that's not Darwinism.
Yes, but I'm saying...
Do you know why? Darwinism is based on individual selection, not group selection.
I understand this,
yeah.
But I'm saying...
Do you understand the difference between group selection and individual selection?
This, but I'm saying that we've lived in groups in one form or another for millions of years. We weren't... Rousseau talks about the noble savage and the idea that if we didn't have...
Who talks about the noble savage?
Rousseau. He believes that without civilization, humanities would descend into a perpetual state of anarchy. But I didn't.
But you know, Rousseau was refuted by Darwinists.
What I'm saying is that yes, exactly.
No, but
we have a natural.
But sorry. What's your name again?
Strabo.
you're using in your argumentation Rousseau to buttress your point, but he was refuted by the Darwinists who wanted to support Hobbes. And remember, Hobbes and Rousseau on opposite spectrums. Faisal, come here, man. Come here. Stop running away. Come here.
I was going to say, the way he described reason right now, Thomas Nagel did say, the way he described reason, reason something helps survive, it wouldn't be the reason of now, it would be instinct.
Exactly.
So if what you're saying is true, then you shouldn't be decided to do this thing, it should be instinctual, right? So what you describe is not reason, you describe instinct.
Yeah, it's instinct.
That's why I need you here.
No, it's instinct. Yeah, well, what I will say is that we've lived.
Why don't you read up on it and we'll come back?
Okay, let's end it here.
Because I feel it's a bit unfair if I'm citing stuff and you haven't read it.
No, I mean, all I will say.
And you sound like a very educated guy, you'll read it very happily.
All I will say is, and these are my closing remarks, we live in groups, we could not survive as individuals, cast aside in some barren wasteland. We have to stick together, and we've used language and reason to achieve group coordination, and I think that the stronger the social bonds and interactions become, the more language developed, the more reason was developed, and ultimately we've become we've reached a great state of rational understanding. But this is through an evolutionary process. And living in a group and the necessities.
The evolutionary thing is, they never actually give evidence for evolution. They give you a story about evolution, which is right now just a narrative as to why it reasons this way and la la la.
Okay, but why would say? So
he's giving me a rational narrative.
No, but okay. Why do you complete your closing remarks? Then I'll do mine, and you as well. Carry on.
I would say this. Okay, our ability to communicate and explore these concepts is ultimately grounded on a desire to articulate the internal landscape of our mind and explain it to other people around us. And this requires reason and thought and intention. But this process of communicating ideas to other people.
Okay, let me finish.
The idea of communicating ideas to other people has been essential for our survival. And all I will say is you do not need to posit some deity to explain the importance of this process, why it came about, and why it ultimately flourished. And within our, as you can see from now, this is a reason at its best. And you don't need a deity to explain it. You just need, Okay. Cheers.
So in terms of closing, all I want to say is that you've described the state of affairs in a way that a Darwinist would not. Because Darwinism is not about group survival, it's about individual survival. And also, if we are not, for example, if we're not using our reason to hunt, now I have surplus reason, I'm going to use it for something else. That doesn't explain reason being used in that context, because from a selective pressure point of view, your constant focus is to increase your fitness. Nothing to do with, let me have a chat with Faisal over WhatsApp about the latest David Belinsky thing or whatever it is, right? Another thing to keep in mind is using this a very Rousseau type of perspective wouldn't help the Darwinian case, because the Darwinists were fixated on refuting Rousseau to buttress Thomas Hobbes in the state of nature, okay? And the last thing is what Nagel pointed out, and thank you for reminding me about him, what Nagel pointed out, and what Beyond Evolution, who's the author? There's another book, Anthony something, right? But anyway, so there's a few authors who've spoken about this, that our ability to use our reason beyond what is good for our survival and our fitness enhancement, that is something which cannot be explained from the Darwinian paradigm. Anyway, your closing remarks.
I'd say everything he was saying, I was trying to get at, because what you're saying is, we use language to survive. Animals do just fine. They say, We are talking not just about quantum mechanics, we're not just talking about theoretical things about politics, we're doing poetry, we're doing all these things which have got nothing to do with survival, right? This is pure entertainment. So that is, and also, when you're talking about God, you're posing another entity, actually you're guilty of Occam's razor. Because by you posing there's no God, you have to pose there is such thing as gravity, there is such thing as nature, there is such thing as randomness. These are more entities that you have to explain, then I have to with a God, right? So my theory, as a Muslim, would have a high explanatory power as you want a kun darkness razor. Because I'm posing less entities than you are.
But you're not saying.
Let's come back when you read the stuff.
I must respond to this one point. You're saying that. So you're saying that God is gravity then?
No.
But then why are you saying that I'm the cause? Okay, well, let me just finish it.
Sure.
By the way, I was not supporting Rousseau. I was using him as an example to explain that why we stick in groups.
No, but that's anti-Darwinian. That's an anti-Darwinian perspective.
I'm not necessarily supporting as I said at the beginning, I'm not a biologist, but I
have you ever had biryani?
But of course I've had.
Yeah. So what you've done is you've done a biryani. You've made a biryani. You've taken Darwinism, which we were talking about, and you've taken the Rousseau state of nature, which is on the opposite end.
I didn't.
Okay. Did you do one thing? Let me just say one thing.
I cited Rousseau. I said he believed in the noble savage, and then I said that, but this state of being is non-existent because we've always lived in groups as a species. So Rousseau was talking about this world outside of society, and I'm essentially saying this world would never actually really obtain because we've always lived in
so what was the state?
When you said poetry, that this is actually very important to survival, entertaining one another within a group, creating a stronger bond within.
Okay, let's finish off this point.
This is all evolution.
So you keep talking about groups. Now I understood what you're saying about Rousseau, what context you used him in. Darwinists do not start with groups. They start with individual level selection, and then what they focus on is reciprocal altruism or kin selection. Okay. No. It's not to do with the groups. No. It's not mutual altruism. It's not. What it is I am going to be good to Faisal because he's going to give me something in the future. It's not altruism. What it is it's a facade, it's a veneer of altruism, which is why David Stove, I know you read Stove as well, right? He talks about this, that Darwinism is a slander against human beings because it's basically saying all of our moral virtues are basically a veneer underneath which they are selfish interests. So the argument that you're using and the picture that you're drawing, it doesn't help your case.
I'll say this about evolution. The ideas of hi.
Good. You know Dawood, yeah?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Everyone knows Dawood.
With this wrapping things up, but there was a brutal attack at the end that I just have to clarify now before I leave.
We'll talk next week.
Yeah, let's wrap things up. Sure. I'm going to go, but
sure. It's good talking to you.
But the one last thing, you say that as an individual, evolution does not explain why I'm talking about groups. I know that it's not from the perspective of group collaboration. Darwin is talking about natural selection, but I'm saying that as an individual, the likelihood of your survival is increased dramatically within a group. So as a being, it's natural. You have a natural propensity to guess it.
But that's not altruism. That's selfishness.
But I know it's selfish. It's selfish.
But I don't. No, but do you believe? Okay, can I ask you something?
Yes.
Faisal, me, you, all of us, right? We believe in altruism in a non-Darwinian sense. We all do.
True altruism.
And that altruism cannot be explained by Darwinism.
Darwinism says altruism doesn't exist. It's an illusion. We're just doing it for reciprocal reasons or kin selection. Altruism is a veneer that we use in society to make something look better. But in reality, it doesn't exist. You have to accept that. It's an illusion of Darwinism.
I fully accept.
Can I give you some calls of a day?
We don't need to. But I don't see how you can infer a deity from this.
How do you explain NHS?
How
do you look at human behavior. How do you explain
the survival of the unfittest? Our tax money.
So much of human behavior that we see all across the world in history and modernity. It's inexplicable. You're saying it's all a lie. It's all a big facade. It's a big circus. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying. It's all a big social game.
I'm not necessarily. I think you can be genuinely altruistic with your action.
But no, not from a Darwinian perspective.
Why would I give you something? You're my competitor. We're competing for resources.
You just cited charity and the NHS.
You're competing for women. We're competing for resources. We're competing for social class. You're competing for jobs. You're my competitor in every aspect. I'm not related to you.
It's a war of all against all.
Why should I be against? Let's be real. You know, talking about hardman Darwinist and soft.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. No, stove.
Let me tell you some quote with David.
But I'm going to give you some stuff to read, and we'll have this discussion again, because it's a bit unfair that we both.
I don't know. I don't think you've really addressed my key contention here. I am ultimately saying that these ideas can be explained through the evolutionary scaffolding, and you're saying we must posit a deity.
So because we spoke for a long time, I'm just going to ask you one question, and then we can end it.
I'm going to go
altruism, the way that we understand it, which is not to get something in back, not due to your not to kin selection or reciprocal altruism. True altruism, can it be explained by Darwinism?
Well, I'm not a biologist. I'm not a biologist.
That's what you're talking.
Yes, but
doesn't exist.
I think there are cases where you are motivated out of a love, perhaps, for your fellow man.
That's not Darwinian at all. That's not Darwinian at all. That's not Darwinism.
Or to strengthen
the
bonds within
that's
a
not
group.
Darwinism.
You can be motivated to promote the interests of your group.
But he said, it's individualistic.
Which you have a natural propensity to follow and be part of.
Because it's going to help you.
No.
Because it's going to help you if you help the group.
Yes.
Yeah, but that wasn't my question. My question was true altruism.
I'm saying
for something you don't get back.
Yes, and I'm saying for the group, like ants die for the queen ant.
Okay.
There are plenty of cases
say
where
there's a
for the group.
Cebu, right? Strabo. You run. There's a house on fire. There's a child. You save the child. You come out and die.
Yes,
right?
Okay.
That's non-Darwinian behavior.
Well, not necessarily, because ultimately I want to help the group. I want to help my fellow man because it's in my interest.
That's not Darwinism. That's not Darwinism.
To help the group, I have a natural propensity towards supporting the group.
Your highest rationale is to survive and
yes,
and flourish. Everything else is secondary.
Yes.
So do not mix them up.
It's a war of, as Stove said, it's a war between you and the postman. It's a war.
If it was a war, it would diminish my opportunities to survival. It would diminish if...
No, but
what he's saying has been accepted in the literature, right? So hardcore evolution biologists have said an altruism doesn't exist. Like they explain it away as kin selection or reciprocal. But
altruism.
It's an argument, right? That doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
It's a social game. I'm trying to look more pretty than I am.
I'm going to send you some stuff to read.
Let me just give you a quote about what we said earlier about Islam human beings.
Sure.
By Dave Valinsky, right?
Okay, thank you. Yes,
it's really good speaking to you.
I'll come back next week.
Let me give you a quote.
I'm not here next week. The week after.
Okay, right.
Let me give you a quick.
Sure. Thank you.
I need to write his name down. It's such a difficult name. What is it? Strabo. What does it mean?
We had a very.
You asked him like 20 times.
I know, man. I know.
Greek name.
Strabo.
Let's give you a quote about what we said early on. There's a good quote about Darwinism and how the Islam human being, right? This is Dave Valinsky, by the way. He goes, human beings are just a continuation of the animal kingdom, cousin akin to everything reported that lives. Hardly distinguishable from the great apes, except for the acquisition of a few skills of no particular significance. So like language and like being able to do this and that's what you believe in.
Particular significance. These have immense significance.
So that isn't.
You should join our camp.
Exactly. You exceptionalism. We are special then.
Yeah.
People are special. No, we should be saying God made us special. Darwin doesn't say no. We're just another animal. We're like the grass over there, but fish evolved into ape evolved into.
We're like a sloth.
Think about cosmology. Those are really important. That's what you're saying. It's all just.
I'm saying that we have a far higher degree of consciousness.
Which is not point.
But it still represents an animal.
But it's not point. The abstract thinking is on point, right? All this quantum mechanics is on point.
There are other
have you got a pen?
Species of hominid that were also rational.
Mahmoud, do you have a pen?
Where they buried their dead.
You have a pen?
You can see they weren't humans, but they were rational.
You got a pen?
But lived alongside humans.
I'm going to write something down.
We killed them off.
I agree with what you're saying, but what you're saying about rationality.
Dawood always has a pen.
It's about three things. It's survival, flourish, and reproduction.
Strabo.
And like he said, Darwinism has some principles. It's a universal philosophy, and it's like he said, it's individualistic, right? You cannot pick and choose when Darwinism applies and when it goes this. You know what they call you? They call you a soft man Darwinist, because what you're saying is, life used to be this disgusting struggle for survival. Everyone used to
the only soft, the only
because of material abundance, we'll be able to overcome this now, and we'll become civilized, and we're able to talk about poetry and have tea, because those days are the past. You're not consistent.
Look, here's the book Darwinian Fairy Tales by David Stove.
Okay,
you read that, we'll have a chat.
Okay,
you see that he's not a soft man. You said he's a soft man. You got hard man, soft man, and then you got a view which doesn't fit. His view doesn't fit because he's trying to defend true altruism.
See about that next time.
Bro, you should join in the conversations more. You keep running away.
I learned stuff from you, bro. Yeah, I learned stuff from him.
Yeah, of course he does. He's well read. That's why I asked him to come in.
When he was talking about like there's no evidence or way to prove altruism based on
Yeah, it's true.
it's like